Anyway, so I thought this has been on my to-do list for the longest time, and it's just basically I've dug into the surface of some of the science behind wireless technology and how it affects our biology. I get the irony. You probably are watching this on a wireless device, and I also welcome all tinfoil hat jokes, and I will be giving prizes to the best ones. I just wanted to say, don't take anything of what I'm about to say as gospel truth. Please go ahead and fact check everything I've said or about to say, and everything I will say is all available online. I am definitely not the first. I am actually just echoing on a lot on the huge movement that's going on right now, where you've got a lot of people, both clinicians and I suppose IT engineers, that are speaking up about some of the health effects of radio frequencies or wireless technology on our health. One of them being Dr. Jack Kruse. Go look up all of his podcasts. They are truly mind-blowing. And Jeremy Johnson, who we'll hear from in a bit. Okay, to touch on some of the science, I thought I'd mention the electromagnetic spectrum. So this is all the electromagnetic frequencies known to us, and obviously there's a spectrum, and on this side of the spectrum we have non-ionizing radio frequencies, and on the other side we have ionizing radio frequencies, and essentially the difference is that we know that on non-ionizing means it doesn't really change the atomic structure of your atoms. But on this side, we do know it changes your structures of your atoms, and it's really, really bad for you. So that's how we know. So medical X-rays, CT scans are definitely on this side. We know it's well documented those are bad. The other side, if you look, the wavelengths get wider, so it can travel further. So these are things like AM, FM radios, TV, phones, Wi-Fi sits roughly about here. But probably the most important one for our biology is what's in between here, in between these two columns, and this is the electromagnetic frequencies that we naturally get from the sun and from the earth, and it's what we've existed within this, I suppose, bracket for hundreds of thousands of years. This is geared to our biology, and the emerging field of biophysics is showing that this particular frequency is so important for our health. So sunlight and the earth is so important for our health, and that conversely, to be outside of this bracket, to be exposed to non-ionizing frequencies, are actually really bad for your health. Before we get into some of the science, I'd love to show you a couple minutes from a TED Talk given by Jeremy Johnson, who's a Silicon Valley engineer. I'll show that to you now.
This is something where when people have more of an exposure, more people are being affected. And it's not just headaches and insomnia. It's much more serious things, such as infertility, DNA damage, and eventually cancer. This is what the research is starting to show. And you don't have to take my word for it. I encourage you to start researching this for yourselves. If you simply Google EMF research, this is a screenshot of what you'll find. The World Health Organization is the first link there, and they actually in 2011 came out and said this wireless technology is possibly carcinogenic. Now there's scientists around the world that say that it's most likely carcinogenic. The third link there is actually my own website. It's there because the last 5 years I've gathered research from around the world that shows that we now have enough evidence to at least take precaution when it comes to this technology. So, isn't this regulated? And this is one of the most interesting things I've found. The Federal Communications Commission is who is supposed to be regulating wireless technology. But if you look at the regulations, they're almost 20 years old. So that means our most advanced technology is using science that's at least 20 years old. But not only that, they're based on a concept which is nearly 50 years old, which says if microwave radiation does not heat us, then it can't possibly hurt us. But there's now hundreds of studies that show that this is false. So how is it that we have a regulatory body that's not protecting the public? Well, like many issues, like many public health issues in our country, you end up having industry influencing the regulatory body. And that's what's happening here. So you have a revolving door between the wireless lobby and the FCC Commission. So that's what's happening. Plus, the science is heavily influenced by industry funding. This is a study by Dr. Henry Lai. He looked at 326 studies based on the biological effects of cell phone radiation. He found that about half of the studies showed effects and half didn't. That's pretty normal for this type of research. But what he found that was interesting was that if you looked at who funded the studies, 70% of the independent studies showed effects, and only 32% of the industry-funded studies showed effects. So you see that there's an influence in money on this topic. Just like many other topics, tobacco is another one where essentially the industry funded science that was going to show their products were safe. So that's the bad news. And now I want to share some good news.